The unexpected reunion. Damien Cross had built his empire with the same precision he applied to everything in life. At 34 years old, he stood at the helm of Cross Technologies, a software giant worth billions, and every polished surface in his headquarters reflected the success he had carved from nothing. That cold November morning, he arrived early for an international video conference, his mind already running through projections and strategies. The lobby of the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine, and Damien moved through it like he owned every atom of air, because he did. The sound of water sloshing caught his attention first. It was an odd noise in a place designed for silence and sophistication. His eyes tracked the source and landed on a figure crouched near the marble fountain in the center of the lobby. A woman in a worn cleaning uniform, her dark brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, was scrubbing at a stubborn stain with methodical determination. Her hands moved with a rhythm that struck something deep in his memory, a familiarity he could not immediately place. Damien slowed his pace without meaning to. His assistant, Trevor, continued talking beside him about quarterly reports, but the words became static. The woman shifted her weight, reaching for a spray bottle, and the angle of her profile made his breath catch in his throat. Time performed a strange trick, bending backward and snapping into sharp focus all at once. He knew that profile. He knew the slope of that nose, the curve of that jaw, the way she tucked her chin when concentrating on something difficult. His feet stopped moving entirely. Trevor nearly collided with him and shot him a confused look, but Damien barely noticed. The woman seemed to sense she was being watched because she glanced up, her eyes scanning the lobby quickly as if checking for supervisors. When her gaze landed on him, everything inside Damien went still. Those eyes. Hazel with flecks of gold near the center. Eyes that had once looked at him like he was the only person in the world who mattered. Nina Foster. The name exploded in his mind like a firework. Nina, who had sat beside him under the old oak tree behind the library when they were kids, sketching pictures of houses they would live in someday. Nina, who had held his hand during his mother's funeral when he was 15 and everyone else had looked at him with pity he could not stand. Nina, who had vanished without a word the summer before college, leaving only an empty apartment and a phone number that no longer worked. She was here. In his building. Wearing a janitor's uniform. Her face had changed, grown thinner and more tired, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and hard years. But it was her. Every cell in his body knew it was her. Recognition flashed across her face too, followed immediately by something that looked like panic. Her hand jerked, and the bottle slipped from her grasp, clattering against the tiles. She scrambled to pick it up, her movements suddenly clumsy and frantic. Damien felt his legs moving before his brain caught up. He walked toward her, ignoring Trevor's startled questions, ignoring the curious glances from employees arriving for their shifts. Nina stood quickly, too quickly, and nearly stumbled backward. Her eyes were wide, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the marble floor itself. He stopped a few feet away from her, close enough to see the way her hands trembled as she clutched the cleaning cloth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 16 years of silence stretched between them like an ocean. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions all at once. Why did you leave? Where did you go? Why didn't you ever call? But what came out of his mouth was simpler and more broken than he intended. Nina? His voice sounded strange to his own ears, rough with emotion he had not felt in years. She flinched as if he had shouted. Her lips parted, then closed again. She shook her head slightly, a gesture that seemed more instinctive than intentional, as if denying the reality of the moment. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll move out of your way." "Sir." The word landed like a punch to his chest. She turned as if to gather her supplies and leave, and panic surged through him. He could not let her disappear again. Not without answers. Not without understanding what had happened to the girl who had once meant everything to him. He reached out, not quite touching her but close enough to make her pause. "Nina, wait. Please." She froze, her back still turned to him. Her shoulders were tense, drawn up near her ears like she was bracing for impact. "It's me," he said, softer now. "It's Damien. You remember me, don't you?" Slowly, painfully slowly, she turned back around. Her eyes were glassy, filled with something that looked like shame mixed with sorrow. She nodded once, a tiny movement. "I remember," she whispered. The lobby around them continued its morning routine, oblivious to the emotional earthquake happening in its center. Employees swiped badges, coffee machines hissed, elevators dinged. But in the space between Damien and Nina, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. "What are you doing here?" he asked, though the answer was obvious and heartbreaking. She glanced down at her uniform, then back at him with a bitter smile that did not reach her eyes. "Working," she said simply. "Same as everyone else." But it was not the same. Not even close. She was scrubbing floors in a building he owned, wearing clothes that had seen better days, looking like life had beaten her down in ways he could not yet comprehend. The Nina he remembered had been full of quiet dreams and gentle laughter. This woman looked like she was holding herself together with sheer willpower. "How long have you been working here?" he asked. She hesitated, then answered. 3 months. 3 months. She had been in his building for 3 months, and he had never known. How many times had she cleaned his office while he was in meetings? How many times had she walked past his door, invisible to everyone including him? The thought made him feel sick. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you come find me?" Her expression hardened slightly, a flash of something defensive crossing her face. "Find you?" she repeated. "Damien, you're a billionaire. You own half the city. I'm a janitor. What exactly was I supposed to say?" The words stung because they revealed a chasm he had not fully realized existed between them now. When they were kids, they had been equals in their shared struggles. Both from broken homes, both dreaming of escape, both clinging to each other when the world felt too heavy. But time had pushed them in opposite directions. He had climbed, and she had fallen. Or been pushed. He did not know yet. But he intended to find out. "You were supposed to say hello," he said quietly. "You were supposed to let me know you were alive." Her eyes filled with tears she would not let fall. "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "Why would you think that?" She looked away, biting her lip. "Because I left. Because I disappeared without explaining. Because I broke every promise we ever made to each other." Her voice cracked on the last word. Damien's chest tightened. He remembered those promises. Promises to stay friends forever. Promises to get out of their dead-end town together. Promises that felt sacred when they were teenagers with nothing but hope in each other. "Nina," he said, stepping closer. "Never stopped wondering what happened to you. I tried to find you. For years, I tried." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw the weight of something enormous in her eyes. Guilt, regret, and something darker he could not name. "I know," she said softly. "I'm sorry." Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through the moment. "Foster. What are you doing standing around?" A man in a supervisor uniform strode toward them, his face pinched with irritation. "You have 3 more floors to finish before your shift ends. Get moving." Nina immediately straightened, her expression shutting down like a door slamming closed. "Yes, Mr. Patterson. I'm sorry." Damien turned toward the supervisor, and the man's irritation evaporated the instant he recognized who he was addressing. His face went pale. "Mr. Cross, I didn't see you there. I apologize if this worker was bothering you." "She wasn't bothering me," Damien said coldly. "And you'll speak to her with respect." Patterson blinked, confused. Of course, sir. I just meant, I know what you meant. And I'm telling you to go back to your office. Now. The supervisor opened his mouth, thought better of it, and hurried away. Damien turned back to Nina, who was staring at him with wide eyes. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did. He paused, then made a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. Come with me. We need to talk. She shook her head quickly. I can't. I'll lose my job. No, you won't. I own the company. Damien, please, Nina. His voice softened. 16 years. I think we've waited long enough, don't you? She looked at him for a long moment, conflict warring across her face. Finally, she nodded. Secrets unveiled and hearts reconnected. Nina followed Damien through the lobby with hesitant steps, acutely aware of every eye that turned toward them. Employees whispered behind cupped hands, their curiosity barely concealed. She felt exposed under the bright lights, her worn uniform a stark contrast to the sleek business attire surrounding her. Damien walked with purpose, his hand hovering near the small of her back without quite touching, as if afraid she might bolt at any moment. He was not wrong to worry. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear before he could ask the questions she had been dreading for 16 years. They entered a private elevator, one that required a key card only executives possessed. The doors slid shut, sealing them in silence. Nina kept her eyes fixed on the floor numbers as they climbed, unable to look at him. She could feel his gaze on her, heavy with unspoken words. The elevator chimed softly as they reached the top floor, and the doors opened onto a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Damien led her to a corner office that was larger than the entire apartment she currently shared with two other women. The space was minimalist but expensive, all clean lines and dark wood. A massive desk dominated one side, while a seating area with leather couches occupied the other. Damien gestured toward the couches. Please, sit. Nina hesitated, then perched on the edge of one, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She was suddenly aware of how she must look, disheveled and out of place in this temple of success. Damien sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His eyes, the same deep blue she remembered, searched her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. Tell me what happened, he said gently. Why did you leave? The question she had known was coming still hit her like a physical blow. Nina took a shaky breath, trying to organize 16 years of pain into coherent words. Where could she even begin? With her mother's diagnosis? With the mountain of medical bills that appeared overnight? With the impossible choice she had been forced to make? My mother got sick, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The summer after graduation. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors said she had maybe 6 months. She watched Damien's expression shift from confusion to concern. He had never met her mother, who had worked 3 jobs and was rarely home, but he knew how much Nina loved her. Nina, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. How could you? I didn't tell anyone. She twisted her hands together, the old guilt rising like bile in her throat. The treatments were expensive. Experimental. Not covered by insurance. I needed money fast, more money than I could make working part-time at the diner. Damien nodded slowly, beginning to understand. So you got a job? Not just any job, Nina said bitterly. I got 3 jobs. Morning shift at a warehouse, afternoon shift cleaning offices, night shift at a 24-hour convenience store. I dropped out of community college. I gave up the apartment we were supposed to share. She finally looked up at him, and the pain in his eyes made her own tears threaten to spill. I gave up everything, Damien. Including you. The words hung in the air between them. Damien ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture she remembered from when they were teenagers and he was trying to process something difficult. "You should have told me," he said, his voice rough. "I would have helped. We could have figured something out together." Nina shook her head. "You were barely surviving yourself. Your scholarship covered tuition, but I knew you were eating ramen 3 times a day and working weekends just to afford books. I couldn't ask you to carry my burden too. It wouldn't have been a burden. You were never a burden." The conviction in his voice made something crack inside her chest. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't just leave because of the jobs. I left because I couldn't watch you sacrifice your future for me." Damien frowned. "What are you talking about?" Nina closed her eyes, the memory still sharp after all these years. "Do you remember the week before I left? When you came to my apartment and told me you were thinking about deferring your acceptance to MIT? That you wanted to stay local, find work, help me with my mom?" His face changed as the memory surfaced. "You told me I was being ridiculous. That I needed to go." "Because you did," Nina said fiercely. "MIT was your dream, Damien. Your chance to build something better than the life we grew up in. I saw the light in your eyes when you talked about those classes, about studying computer science with the best minds in the world. I couldn't let you throw that away. So you disappeared to force my hand. It was not a question." Nina nodded miserably. "I changed my number. I moved to a different part of the city. I made sure you couldn't find me because I knew if you did, you'd stay. You'd give up everything to help me, and I couldn't live with that." Damien stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was strained. "You made that choice for both of us. You decided what I wanted, what I could handle, without even asking me." The accusation stung because it was true. "I know," Nina said softly. "I know I was wrong. But I was 18 and terrified and drowning. I thought I was doing the right thing. The right thing would have been trusting me." He turned back to face her, and she saw anger mixed with hurt in his expression. "The right thing would have been letting me choose. Instead, you vanished and left me thinking I had done something wrong. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Tears finally spilled down Nina's cheeks. "I'm sorry. God, Damien, I'm so sorry. I thought about calling you 1,000 times. But months turned into years, and it felt like too much time had passed. Like I had burned that bridge beyond repair." Damien was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed everything. Finally, he asked, "Your mother. Did she make it?" Nina's face crumbled. "No. She died 8 months after her diagnosis. The treatments bought her a little time, but not much." "And after that? What happened after that?" She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "I was in debt. Massive medical debt that took years to pay off. I kept working multiple jobs, kept my head down. I never went back to school. I just survived, day by day." Damien crossed the space between them and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. The gesture was so familiar, so achingly reminiscent of their teenage years, that Nina nearly sobbed. His hands were warm and solid, grounding her. "You've been struggling alone for 16 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. "While I built this." He gestured vaguely at the office, the building, his entire empire. "I succeeded because you sacrificed everything. Do you understand that?" Nina shook her head. "You succeeded because you're brilliant and determined. That had nothing to do with me." "It had everything to do with you," he insisted. "I went to MIT angry and heartbroken, and I poured all of that into my work. Every late night, every impossible problem, every company I built from nothing, I did it thinking maybe someday I'd be successful enough to find you. To prove to you that I could have handled it. That we could have handled it together." The revelation left Nina breathless. All these years, she had imagined him moving on, forgetting about the girl from his past. She never imagined she had been his motivation. "Damien, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me help you now." He squeezed her hands gently. "Say you'll give me the chance I should have had 16 years ago." Nina wanted to say yes. Every part of her wanted to collapse into his arms and accept the lifeline he was offering. But pride, stubborn and sharp, held her back. "I can't be your charity case," she said. "I can't be the broken girl you fix to make yourself feel better." Damien's expression hardened. "Is that really what you think this is? After everything we just talked about, you think I'm offering help out of pity?" "I think you're a good man who feels guilty," Nina said, pulling her hands from his. "And I think in a few weeks, once the shock wears off, you'll realize that the girl you knew doesn't exist anymore." "I'm not that person, Damien. I'm tired and damaged and I've made peace with being invisible." She stood, moving toward the door. "Thank you for listening. But I need to get back to work before they dock my pay." Damien rose quickly, blocking her path. "Running away again won't solve anything." "I'm not running. I'm being realistic." "No, you're being scared." His words stopped her cold. "You're scared that if you let me in, I'll see exactly how much you're hurting. You're scared that accepting help means admitting you can't do everything alone." "But Nina, strength isn't about suffering in silence. It's about knowing when to reach out." She looked up at him, and for the first time in years, she let someone see past the walls she had built. "What if I reach out and you realize I'm not worth saving?" The question was so raw, so vulnerable, that Damien's entire expression softened. He reached up, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "You were always worth it," he said quietly. "From the moment you sat next to me in 6th grade and told me my drawing of a robot was terrible but you liked my choice of colors anyway. You've been worth it every single day since." Nina let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "That robot was terrible. It really was." He smiled, and the sight of it, warm and genuine, made something inside her begin to thaw. "Let me take you to dinner. Tonight. No pressure, no expectations. Just two old friends catching up." "Can you do that?" She hesitated, fear and hope warring inside her. But looking into his eyes, seeing the same person she had loved in another lifetime, she found herself nodding. "Okay. Dinner." Relief flooded his face. "Okay. I'll have my assistant arrange everything." "Where are you living?" "I'll send a car." "You don't have to do that. I can meet you wherever." "Nina, please. Let me do this one small thing." She gave him her address reluctantly, watching as he typed it into his phone. When he looked back up at her, his expression was determined. "This isn't the end of the conversation," he said. "But it's a start." Nina nodded, something fragile and precious blooming in her chest. Hope. After 16 years of carrying her burdens alone, maybe it was time to let someone help share the weight. As she left his office and made her way back to the elevator, she caught her reflection in the glass. She still looked tired and worn, but there was something different in her eyes now. Something that looked almost like possibility. Behind her, Damien watched her go, his mind already racing with plans. He had spent 16 years building an empire. Now he would spend however long it took rebuilding the connection they had lost. Because some things were worth more than money or success. And Nina Foster had always been worth everything.